Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today is day 22 in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, and the fighting continues. We're starting to hear reports now that possibly the Russian area of operations that is focused on Kiev, west of the Dnieper River, east of the Dnieper River, and areas generally in the north of Ukraine have reportedly sought reinforcements from some of the southern area of operations, specifically the 58th Army Group that is operating out of Crimea and is normally based in southern Russia. And again, that could be because of continued, very, very tenacious resistance that is taking place in the north of Ukraine, specifically around the city of Kiev. It's possible that those commanders in charge of the operation to envelop and/or seize control of Kiev currently feel they may not have the resources available to gain control of the city and the areas around the city. But we're also hearing that quite possibly that request was denied. So, if that's the case, if we're seeing areas where you have very specific Russian commanders in charge of operations requesting additional forces from other areas where the Russian operation is occurring, that would indicate, again, as we had talked about before, there may not be a sort of unity of command in this total operation. It looks, again, more and more like there could be up to three different areas or three different commanders, possibly four, in their sectors of operation. And again, first is Kiev, and then quite possibly there could be an additional command area of responsibility near Kharkiv. Now, these could be the same, or they could be divided up into two different operational commands. And then, obviously, in the east, there appears to be focused efforts by whoever is in charge of operations coming out of the eastern separatist areas and areas to the north of that area as well. And then finally, the operation coming out of Crimea. And again, they all appear to be under their own commands and their own force construct. And they each have apparently what looks like, at least from us here at Military and Foreign Affairs Network, their own objectives that they are trying to achieve. And there does not appear to be, at least on the surface, this unified command structure with very, very specific goals, with one leader running a set operation. There quite possibly could be anywhere from 3 to 4 leaders directing this multi-pronged invasion of Ukraine. And it's proving to be, at least from what I am viewing, it's proving to be problematic. And again, we haven't seen a lot of movement in the last several days now, obviously, in terms of the Russians regaining perceived momentum or perceived initiative in terms of continuing to capture areas of Ukraine. Right now, the Russians seem to have settled in kind of these semi-sieges of areas such as of Kiev, Kharkov, and various settlements in the east and in the south as well, and now are looking to continue to bombard those targets with both air power and obviously lots of artillery and multiple launch rocket systems, and continuing to utilize cruise missiles as well. But we have to believe that there is some merit to some of the casualties that the Russians have sustained in this ongoing conflict. We cannot deny what we have seen in terms of video evidence of these destroyed Russian vehicles that are really kind of all over the web at this point. And other information obviously received as well via us. Now, with that being said, obviously the Ukrainians as well have suffered great losses too. And I would believe that quite possibly the Ukrainians have suffered just as many, if not more, battlefield losses than the Russians, given the widespread use of cruise missiles and tactical aircraft dropping some very, very large ordnances on Ukrainian positions. Now, we're not seeing some of the precision anti-tank guided weapon systems that are being deployed, that the Ukrainians are deploying, that you're seeing on footage, but nonetheless, the Russians still have some of those systems, or systems very much like them. We're just not seeing as much video evidence of that taking place, especially on Western media. But it is definitely out there. You can physically see, for instance, Ka-52 Russian attack helicopters going after Ukrainian assets. And then obviously, if the Russians have launched hundreds and hundreds of cruise missiles, that has taken a toll as well on the Ukrainian military. But again, right now, the Russians seem content to just slug it out with artillery and its fixed-wing aircraft, and really don't appear to be making a lot of advances on the ground further than what they have currently taken. There was a lot of talk down in the south that we would see the Russians move on Odessa again. I think that is probably weeks out before that would in fact occur. That would be a very, very large operation, and we would have to see other operations kind of get wrapped up before we would see the Russian move on Odessa. So you would have to see the Russians secure Mariupol, and quite possibly significant pacification of areas leading up to the city of Odessa before we would finally see a direct attack on Odessa. So again, I don't think we're going to see that in the near future. Could be wrong, and we could wake up tomorrow and find a Russian amphibious landing someplace within the enviros of Odessa, but I highly doubt it. I don't think it's going to occur. In fact, it would appear that the Russians are trying to cobble together enough assets to actually threaten Kiev. Right now, and again, I've talked about this prior to the conflict even starting, the sheer size of Kiev, and not only that, the size of the urban settlements that are in between Kiev and the Russian border as well. And again, areas such as Chernihiv and these suburban areas such as Zhytomyr over here to the I didn't pronounce that right, but again, lots of these built up urban areas that the Ukrainians are fighting out of. And what's happening is, yes, the Russians are bypassing some of these settlements, but what we're finding is the Ukrainians are then popping up out of these settlements to then attack the Russian rear areas. And that is causing the Russians really some challenges at this point. And we're seeing that on the ground as well in Kharkiv, too. Again, very, very large city, huge city, millions of people. Very, very built up area with multi-story buildings, very well constructed with subways and underground systems that make this an incredibly challenging battlefield environment for the Russians to operate in. Compounding that, we're seeing more and more weapon systems being deployed via the West to Ukraine. Now we're hearing that it looks like another $800 million has been set aside to support the Ukrainian military. I'm sure a portion of that will go to Ukrainian sexual reassignment I'm just kidding. Maybe not. I don't know. But we're now seeing that systems like the Switchblade will be transferred over to the Ukrainians, and they will have that. So just real quick, the Switchblade is a very small drone, a very inexpensive drone. I think it costs about $6,000 to produce one. But it's a loitering drone that has basically a 10-minute loitering time, has a range of about 5 miles, 6 miles, and weighs about 6 pounds, and has a really small kind of like a small grenade, a 40 millimeter, has the explosive capacity of basically a 40 millimeter grenade. So it's not going to take out and destroy tanks. It's not going to destroy even armored personnel carriers, such as the BMP-1 or 2 or 3 or even the BTR 80s or 82s that the Russians are deploying. But what it will do is it can cause great harm to both infantry and then obviously logistics trucks. And again, this small drone can come down on a fuel tanker or a truck that the Russian military is using, and then it detonates over the vehicle, and it basically kind of acts like a big shotgun in terms of sending fragmentation down upon that vehicle or those troops in the open. And it's launched very much like a mortar, and and then once it's launched, a operator then guides that drone towards a target. It does also have kind of a unique auto tracking feature that makes it a bit more accurate. And again, it's kind of that kamikaze style drone that we've seen the Israelis use. Now, again, it's not as big as some of these Israeli drones, but in terms of attacking infantry and trucks and that sort of a target, it should do just fine. I don't think it's going to have an issue with. I don't think the Russians should be concerned with it attacking armored vehicles. But again, those truck-borne infantry and those trucks, those supply lines that the Russians are using, or a more fragile piece of equipment such as maybe a radar dish of some sort of communications device, that would be something that this small drone would be able to render inoperable. But again, it looks like some of those are going to be transferred over to the Ukrainians, and we know obviously thousands of anti-tank weapon systems have been delivered, and along with Stingers, and we're starting to see those systems really kind of come into their own within this conflict, causing at times a great many casualties for the Russians. That in-law that has been deployed is really showing itself to be a fairly high quality piece of equipment. Now, it's not guided in the sense that we know the Javelin and some other systems where you keep the reticle in the target, but again, with that metal sensing warhead that detonates over top of a target, it's very effective. And then even though it's a line of sight weapon, it's proving to be very, very accurate of traveling that line of sight within 600 yards and hitting the target that the soldier is aiming for. So we've seen them being used time and time again, where it takes much more skill to fire a RPG-7, say at 300 yards, to accurately hit a tank, and then even then, it may not at times detonate correctly or disable the vehicle. With this in-law, again, because of that magnetic warhead flying over the vehicle, which then senses it, again, it appears to be operating as described, and very, very effective, and it's causing the Russians a great deal of issue. And again, another area is the snipers that the Ukrainians are fielding as well. We understand that the Ukrainian sniper that have been trained, a lot of those have been trained obviously by NATO nations, and they as well have had a great deal of experience in the eastern separatist areas as well. So our understanding is that Ukrainian snipers with some of this long-range precision shooting, operating some out of these very, very tall buildings that dot the landscape, and in some cases are being rubblized. Just one or two snipers can cause a great deal of anxiety for ground forces. And in fact, we've quite possibly seen at least one of these 4 Russian generals that have been reported to have been KIA. At least one was caused by this long-range sniper craft that the Ukrainians are utilizing. But again, that's kind of where we're at right now, and we'll have to wait and see what additional weapon systems are transferred over to the Ukrainians. Again, 800 million inbound of more weapon systems for the Ukrainians, and this is quite a quagmire right now for the Russians. Outside of a renewed momentum shift by the Russians in regaining initiative, where we start to see an uptick in operations is possible. We're really hearing a variety of things in terms of the force construct with the Russians. We're hearing in some cases that they're redeploying forces from areas such as Armenia, Tajikistan, from the Far East. They're moving in additional forces. We understand that there is a more heavy use in the Russian National Guard, additionally being deployed in the Ukraine, and obviously coming out of the U.S. Pentagon indicates that roughly 75% of the total Russian combat power is deployed against the Ukraine at this point. So again, a significant force construct by the Russians and additional forces being brought to bear. And it also looks like they're trying to reshuffle and reconsolidate forces that may have suffered significant casualties in the earlier parts of the invasion, and hobbing together some of these battalion tactical groups that have suffered 10, 20, 30% casualties, and then reforming them and merging them with other battalion tactical groups and forming new battalion tactical groups. At the same time, the Russians are obviously are learning too. Again, we haven't seen this kind of warfare that's taking place between Russia and Ukraine. Again, two industrialized powers with direct support from Western nations. Okay. Again, the West is supporting not only Ukraine with weapons systems, but intelligence and probably battlefield advice as well. So, again, this is something that even the United States hasn't really encountered as of yet, in terms of, we understand that obviously the United States has been engaged in countries such as Iraq, Afghanistan, and Serbia. But again, that really pales in comparison to what the Russians are dealing with and the size and scope of the operation inside of Ukraine. Again, the Ukrainian army much more proficient, much more supplied, and better trained than any army the United States has faced off against in quite some time. And I think you'd have to go back all the way to World War II, quite possibly, to see a army that the United States has faced in terms of just competency and proficiency, and then the level of support as well the Ukrainians are receiving from the West. So I don't think you can compare, as I've talked about before, with the experience of the U.S. Army in Iraq and look at the success, at least in the initial invasion, that the United States had, and how quickly the United States was able to depose Saddam Hussein. This in the Ukraine is a completely different ballgame, completely different. You cannot compare the two, and the Russians are learning that right now. And this is something, again, we've not seen in many decades. And again, going back to World War II would be the last time we've seen this kind of fighting between two competent industrial powers facing off and fighting each other. And then especially the support that the Ukrainians are getting from the West is amplifying the challenges for the Russians as well. But that's where we stand for today. We'll continue to update, report, and bring you more information as soon as we get it. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. More to come. Have a good day, everybody.